It's a wonderful pleasure to welcome Kerri once again to this program. She's a singer-songwriter from the Ontario area, Canada. The last time we met, it was with her lovely trio, the Good Lovelies, and today we're discussing her music as a solo artist. Kerri, welcome to the show. It's good to see you.
Well, it's good to see you too. Thanks for having me on talking about all the music. It's all happening.
Yes, of course. So I'd like to begin by asking you about your Easter. How was it?
You know what? My husband was away for a month, leading into Easter, and I had been uh, away also. So we had a very quiet, very at home sort of Easter while he recuperates from overseas travel.
I
I
see.
loved it. It was very, very calm. How about you?
Yeah, I think contrary to you, I did do some traveling during Easter. Um, when I was starting to live here permanently, it took me a very long time to set up some the paperwork necessary to be a resident and also to produce the papers necessary for travel. So I was basically stuck in this town for upwards of 5 to 6 months. So when I got all the papers, the first thing I decided to do is to travel back to Vienna, where I lived last year, to spend a weekend of Easter there. It was a
That's
lovely
great.
trip. I went to see my old church where I attended, and got to meet an old friend. And of course, it was always great to de-stress because the week before that was an incredibly busy one.
Good for you. Good for you. It's fun. It's funny. It's whatever busy season. If I come off a busy season, I want to stay home. If I've been home, I want to go away. I totally understand that.
Yes, of course. Yeah. So tell me about your tour with the Good Lovelies.
Well, we're sort of perpetually on tour right now with a new record. Um, our new record came out in October, as you know, and we hit the west coast of Canada, and then in November we were in the east coast of Canada, and then in December we were in Ontario, which is our home province. And January we spent 3 weeks in England, Ireland, Scotland, and uh, yes, like just in Wales, just
Hmm.
touring that record to new audiences. And February hit, and we arrived home and had the pleasure of being nominated for a Canadian Juno for that record. So what was going to be a quiet period of time at home turned into preparing a mini, vacation tour celebration of Canadian music for the last couple of weeks of March. So the touring has been extensive and very rewarding. People are showing up. We've been doing this for 18 years. I There's nothing I like better than playing music in front of a live audience. There really is no greater joy in this job than that for me personally.
Hmm. Well, congratulations for the Juno nomination.
Thank you. Thank you. We didn't win, and we were
Oh,
totally okay because our category was very good friends of ours, very talented company to be in, and just it like I know it's cliched, but it really was like just an honor to be recognized at that level with this record because it's our favorite record since I mean it's
mhm,
just our favorite record. So
mhm.
it's great.
Yeah, just a reminder, the record is titled We Will Never Be the Same, and it's a lovely record.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes. So tell me about whatever the next leg of the tour might be.
Yeah, so we're now doing like a what are we doing next? I guess right now we're doing a lot of prep because we're self directed and self managed, and so we get to the three of us get together and decide how we want to spend our days. So we back in while we were touring our Christmas tour in December, we realized we wanted to do a proper launch of this record across all the smaller towns and cities in Ontario, which which we never get to do because we always hit just the biggest cities for this Christmas tour. We never do the smaller markets. So we've got this I think we're doing 14 shows in Ontario at these gorgeous little theaters here and there, north, east, west, and a bit southwest. That kicks off May 8th and wraps up June 2nd or June something, June 6th or something.
Mhm.
And on to the festival season and on and on and on. Like we're gonna cram it full this year, you know.
I see. Yeah. So with all of that busyness going ahead, so how do you balance that with your family life?
It's a great question, and I don't think I achieve balance. To be perfectly honest, I think when I'm in work mode and tour mode, it's all about the work because
Mhm.
it comes in fits and spurts. Sometimes it's three, like we were in England for 3 weeks, and I'm literally unable to do chores, tend to my house, worry about the things that need worrying. I just can't do it. So in those days of my absence, I just fully focus on the work, and when I come home, I fully focus on home. And I don't know that this works for everybody, but it really does work for my personality. So I don't balance it very well. When I'm away, it's very clear that I'm away, gone, and working. And when I am home, I am very present and very sort of not willing to poke holes in that home time. Like if someone asked me today when I knew I got to be home and I had a whole plan, and they were like, "Let's go on tour today," and I didn't have time to prepare for it, it's not really on the table for me. I'm pretty boundaried about it. So,
Mhm.
so with that said, my home time is very cherished and protected.
I see. I would assume that you're currently at home right now.
I am at home right now. I just got back. I went skating
Mhm.
for my lunch hour. The last day that the ice is in my local rink, so I went skating and came home and tried to de-sweat and wanted to be slightly presentable. And got my guitars behind me that I'm going to practice when we're off the meeting. And yeah,
Of course.
in sort
Yes.
of in the middle of my house here.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So are you excited to be out of the cold because the winter and everything?
Winter is back. Winter in April in
Oh,
Ontario is a very real thing. So
oh, well.
we have we had a snowstorm yesterday into today. So I'm just bracing for a few days until we get spring again.
Hmm. Yes. I lived for 4 years in a small town in Ontario, and I believe winter didn't really end until like mid-May, if I can remember.
Yeah,
But
where were you again?
Peterborough, that's where Trent
Yeah, so
University
you're
is. Yes.
that's right. I'm a half an hour from Peterborough. I'm very
Hmm.
close.
Hmm.
So it today when we got our snow, Peterborough got it that much worse. So
Oh,
they had
wow.
a snow they the schools had a snow day today. And it's there's none left on the ground outside, but that's an April snowstorm is like to be expected. So you got it. It's we're
Mhm.
gonna get a few more, I'm sure. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. That's something I kind of miss upon leaving Canada. I haven't been back since 2021, but I don't think the nostalgia will be that long if I like actually experience it. Like maybe 3 days in, I'll get like really sick of it.
Yeah. That's fair. I mean, better days are ahead. I do think once May hits and the days are longer and the birds are out. We've had
Mhm.
like, the weather has been so strange this winter here. We've almost had no snow. I didn't get to go cross country skiing. I was out running in a t-shirt in February, but now I'm wearing my winter coat in April. Like nothing makes any sense anymore. So it's a big question mark until it's
Mhm.
finally summer, basically. Yeah.
Yes. And of course, summer is often a very busy time for musicians with all the festivities going around. So certainly hope that you're prepared for that.
It can be. A lot of people really stack their summers up, but to be fair, the Good Lovelies work in the fall and winter so
Mhm.
much that we actually try to say no in the summer. We try to go to summer cottages. I don't love performing when it's 40 degrees outside and I'm sweating on my guitar. I prefer just sort of doing a few things in July and then just having a lot of time by the lakes because summer's so short, you know.
Mhm.
So we try
Yes.
to enjoy it as best we can. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, in my experience, I think Canadian summer because of COVID. I didn't get to go home in the summers of 2020 and 21. I think it was between like June till September, right?
Got it.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember the best thing about summer is Peterborough has a river that flows through it, Otonabee, and I get to swim there. I think around the summer months the water is cool enough to swim in, and yeah, it's a very refreshing experience.
There's nothing like it. Freshwater rivers and lakes. There's nothing like it. So we have Lake Ontario nearby here,
Mhm.
and my dad lives close by as well, and he has a pool. So my sisters and I, and all their kids congregate, and we spend a lot of days dipping our bodies in those bodies of water. So I do like to protect that time off as well. Yeah.
Oh yes. So tell me about the UK leg of the Good Lovelies tour.
Yeah. Anything. What do you want to know?
Well, first, what was your impression of the different parts of the United Kingdom? Because I haven't been there.
You haven't been there. Okay. So I've been there 8 times,
Mhm.
and we usually go in May, June, or October, maybe October once, but usually we're there in May and June. And we went in January for the first time ever and didn't know if it was going to be like, you just didn't know if people were going to be coming out, if it was going to feel like winter, or if it was going to be a downtime for people. You just never know, right? So we tried this new thing and went in January. And it turns out we were the opening concert for most of the concert series of 2024, which was cool because I think the tour started on like the 18th or 19th of January, something like that. And everywhere we went, that was the people's first concert of 2024, and they were just getting back into seeing live music after Christmas, and it was very joyous. We were the first show that was non-Christmas for them, and uh, we worked hard. We had 2 days off in 18 days, and we just played, moved, played, moved, played, moved, and some new places and some not old places. We went to Liverpool for the first time, played a beautiful venue there. We played in Cardiff, Wales, at this great old chapel that they've converted into a venue and a pizza, like a wood-fired pizza, famous pizza place. So
Mhm.
we had a great time. We ended up in Scotland for the Celtic Connections Festival, and that was a real highlight as well, just because we'd played in Scotland a few times before to beautiful little folk audiences, and this time we were playing for 400 people in front of, you know, fantastic audience. And it was a festival that goes on for 3 weeks in January. So if you do go at some point to Scotland, you'll hear every type of music, so much world class music there in January. So it is actually, once I was there, I realized people were making it into a destination to go see live music
Mhm.
in January.
Yeah, sounds like you had a great time.
I think you should go. I think you should do it.
Oh yeah, I'll let you know if I have an opportunity to.
I'll send you the cities that we visited, so you can have and I can give you a check mark on the very best places that I thought were great for touring.
Awesome. I'll greatly appreciate that. So tell me about the difference between small town Ontario and big city Ontario.
I've lived in both. I've lived in actually I would actually call Toronto's a pretty big city, and I live in a small town. And I would say just the difference is the operating hours of my small town. It's pretty closed down here at 6 or 7 most nights of the week, and it's a beautiful town, and we're close to the city. But like, you go for a walk at 7 o'clock, you're not just gonna jump in and see some live music most nights. Like, it's just not very happening.
Mhm.
And then in the city, you could, almost any day of the week, pop out at the last minute and pick up some live music, or go to have a nice meal. Like, it just doesn't happen in the small towns. The people everywhere here um, are generally amazing. Big town, small town. Um, and I've lived in St. John's, Newfoundland, which I would consider, it's obviously the capital city of Newfoundland, but it's also a really small city. So it almost feels just like a big small town. So I think the difference would just be the operating hours. There's just not enough people in my little town to keep 20 restaurants open after 6 o'clock. So
Yeah. Um, so for me, when because I live in Vienna last year, I feel like Vienna is it's a big city with a small town feel because
okay.
like you said, the operating hours of Vienna is very early, like stores and restaurants and stuff close very early, and the evenings tend to be very quiet. Budapest is different. It's a smaller city than Vienna, but more things happen there.
Mm,
It's a city with a robust nightlife. I happen to live in the district in Budapest with many like bars and nightclubs going on. Uh,
that's fantastic.
oh yeah. Um,
I don't know
but
if I told you,
yeah.
I don't know if we talked about this last time, but one of my first class projects when I was like in grade four, I was like 10 years old, I picked Budapest
Mhm.
as and I did so much research on it and became obsessed with it that I have never been there as an adult in my whole life, but I feel because of that project, I'm like, I actually haven't visited there. I just obsessed over it for like a year when I was 10.
Mhm.
I love that you're there.
Oh yeah. I like Vienna for what it used to be. Like it used to be the center of all European intellectual and artistic life. It is still a beautiful city, but it's a rather quaint city. Now
Hmm.
Budapest, despite the proximity, never had such a robust intellectual and artistic life the way Vienna is. But I think it's a city with a lot of I guess history in regards to the historical upheaval of it, because the country as well as the city as well as the country experienced like waves upon waves of authoritarian and totalitarian politics over the 19th and 20th century. In fact, I'm not sure if this came up in your research back in the day, but the I believe it was the 14th or 15th of March is one of the national holidays here, and it celebrates the national revolution in the mid 19th century, where they revolted against the Habsburgs.
Right. Yeah, I had forgotten. Yeah.
And of course, the revolution of 56, perhaps it came up in your research somehow. Yeah.
To open that project up, I keep everything. I
Mhm.
should open it up and show you my grade four self's obsession with the because it was the culture at the time. Because of course I grew up in the town that I live right now, very small town, and the idea of a I mean I went to Vienna when I was 17, and it opened my whole mind to the fact that there were old cities because Canada is not that
Yeah.
old. And yeah, it maybe it was always meant to be that I was going to travel around and see these things with my own eyes and just change my perspective on it all. But maybe that all started with project back in 1990.
Mhm. It's wonderful. And I certainly hope that you get to travel here. And if you do, I'd love to meet.
Likewise, likewise, especially knowing that you're my neighbor up the road in Peterborough.
Hmm. Oh, I'd love to return to that part of Canada. There were a mix of good and bad memories, but overall they were good. So,
Yeah, I can understand that and I can appreciate that for sure. It is a mixed
mhm.
experience being in this part of the world as well.
Yes. So I wonder, this is a interesting question, but had you not been a musician, what sort of other career slash life path can you think of?
Well, it's it's a it's a I think this is a great question for two reasons. Is I feel what I know now about myself, if I think back to what I would have done if I hadn't gone in this career path, is that I didn't realize that I could make a career. the
Mhm.
one that I'm in. I didn't realize that. I knew I had um, I knew I had a calling to do music. So all I knew leaving high school and going to school was I'm a good student. I'm a good learner. I'm a very curious person, but I just knew that music was going to be part of whatever path that took. So anytime I've had thoughts about alternative career paths, music's in it. So even if I was going to work, um, even if I was going to go down a path of helping with the mental wellness or going to some sort of medical area or some sort of therapist angle, music and art were going to be part of it. And that's just the through line for me was that every career that I imagine that I've had and have now, and from now until the time that I'm gone, is going to have music in it because I can't not do music. I find so much joy in the making of it and the performing of it, but also in the sharing of it. So before I knew that I was going to do this, I was in school studying music and loved conducting choirs. I loved composing. I loved it when I would take my like when I taught choirs um, outside of university or high school. I conducted choirs. So I imagine that if it wasn't like my true answer is music was going to be a part of my life in my career somehow.
Mhm.
Even if I was doing something like even if I was a lawyer, I'd find a way that music was going to be part of my lawyer life because that's just who I am. But as I think of where I am in my life right now and the fact that I think I could have like this career and also adjacent careers, I'm finding sport and um, endurance activities like endurance running really coming to the front of my mind to sort of complement my music side. Because if I'm not making music and like sharing and communing with other people that way, I need to move my body. Like I need to be in movement. So it's like I can imagine another world where I would just make long distance running. Even though I'm not the fastest and I might not win all the races, I can imagine that would be somehow how I would keep my it's a really weird answer because I don't really know what I would do if it's not really a career, but this is just how I would spend my time is doing like 100-kilometer runs and then go back and play the guitar or something. But,
Yes. For me, I between the ages of 16 to I suppose 20, I wanted to fashion myself as a playwright. Um,
right on.
yeah. My I think my second year at Trent, I studied a class where we look at a bunch of plays. And I think Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf was part of it, and that really got me inspired to write plays. After all, I like reading them. I like watching movies where there's a lot of like dialogue
Dialogue.
going on.
Me
So
too.
Woody Allen stuff, for example.
Oh yeah.
I did write one play at that time in my third year. It was submitted as a practicum project for one of my course, so I got like school credits for it,
Right on.
and um, I tried to have like organize like a table read for it, but circumstances were not in my favor, so it fell through. Um, it was a rather good play. It the main character are a couple of siblings, a brother and sister, and it takes place in a car on the road, and they were on the way to visit their mother who was dying, and deals a lot with the theme of like sibling conflict, and I guess the entire theme of familial conflict too, and of course the road. Um, and I tried to write a second one, but I realized that um I'm not as good at creating characters as I as I thought I would be. So
Hmm.
any character that I would come up with will likely be autobiographical or an extension of myself in some ways. So my writing, I'm certainly returning to writing at this point, but it's mostly nonfiction writing about subjects that I am interested in. The platform in which this podcast is featured, my Substack page also features like a series of small writing pieces that I do about politics and history and philosophy, etc. So I took the roundabout road, but I end up writing nonetheless.
Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely. And are you studying to are you what are you studying?
American studies.
American studies. Okay.
Yeah.
Lots of essay writing, lots of
Yeah, lots of reading. And last semester I did a lot of essay writing too.
it's amazing what the practice of writing will teach you about your how you think.
Mhm.
Like one of the practices that I have been doing since I was 17 years old, I learned from Julia Cameron's the artist's way. Do you know Julia Cameron? Yeah.
Tell me about
This
her.
she wrote this very hilariously famous book that about it's called The Artist's Way, and she's trying to help every person, not just people who call themselves artists, tap into their creative selves. And she it's a practical guide of um of like she'll have like week one is stay away from the news and the media, and one of the other instructions is take yourself on an artist date, where the only point of that is to go to museums or art galleries or a play or a ballet, or just take yourself out and expose yourself to things so that you can get in touch with what lights you up. And when I was 17, I went to church with this. I had this cool minister. She was 60 and she like dyed her hair green and had and played hockey. And she had this reading group. Actually, I was 16. She had this reading group, and she said to me to come join it. And they were reading The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron. So my takeaway at the time, I was already a journaler, was to write these things that she termed as morning pages. And you're meant to wake up in the morning, and it's meant to kind of clear the cobwebs and start to like you just get your handwriting. You could write your grocery list, you can write your chore list, you can write I don't even want, you can just write I don't want to write, I don't want to write. The idea is to get moving the creative juices in you for 3 pages, long form, and then walk away and then use that as a way to sort of wake you up. And I've been doing that pretty much every day since I was 17,
Mhm.
and it has taught me how to think, because even if it's messy writing first thing in the morning when I'm not really awake yet, it has developed thoughts. It's where I've remembered jokes that are good for stage, or developed like you said, a character. If I find myself at the end of 750 words writing one funny thing, I'll pull that funny thing out and try to develop it into something else. So anyway, years later in the pandemic, especially, she released like a 30th anniversary of this, which I was like, this is so funny because I keep hearing all these like Tim Ferriss's and Rich Rolls and all these podcast artists say, I did morning pages since I was 20, since I was 30. And I'm like, I've been obsessed with this woman forever. And then I find out one of them has her on, she's 80 or something now, and they had her on a podcast during the pandemic and talked to her about how her book was so influential. Did she ever expect that? And I learned so much about her. She had like drug addiction. She like dated Martin Scorsese. Like her story was crazy, but all I knew was that she believed in God, and that my minister introduced this to me when I was a kid, when I was a teenager, and it made a huge impression on me. And it's really helped me write songs, get my feelings out, process grief, process life. I don't know. It's great. I love writing. I think it's like an essential thing. I think everybody should write.
Yes, of course. I remember going through like a slew of how to write manuals. I think I still have a copy of Stephen King's on writing book.
On writing, it's
Yeah,
like I love that. It's like another Bible for me. I love it.
yeah, it's a wonderful book. But
Amazing. I wish I was sitting in front of my books right now. I'd show you all my writing books.
but I think the thing that most most books on writing I miss. They tend to focus on the technique of writing, but what I've learned so far is to be a good writer, you have to be a good reader, and to be a good reader, you have to read a lot. And
100%.
I think any writing manual that do not have those two sentences are, I think for me, it's not worthy of your time. So,
And I think Stephen King does say that. I think he's like, you can't be a good writer if you're not a good reader. And I think Natalie Goldberg said that, and Annie Dillard said that, because how, or like if you want to be how you can't be a great songwriter if you don't listen to music.
mhm,
You can't be a great, like if you're not, same thing, you can't be a great artist unless you expose yourself to great art, because how we're so interconnected with these things.
mhm.
So you must love reading. You must have a great library.
I do. I live close to great libraries too, so that gives me a good benefit. Um,
That's great.
um, and I believe you know the filmmaker Werner Herzog, the
Oh yeah.
German filmmaker.
Yep.
He's a fan of reading too. I think um he said that one of his like biggest advice to young filmmakers is to read, and it's not to like find out all of the techniques and jargon of filmmaking or you know what makes a good 3-act script. He just says to read and to read a
I,
lot.
it's like it you know what, what's funny too, some of the best books that I've read inspired me to want to write, and actually some of the worst books I've read made me want to write, because I realized that I was like, why was that such a bad book? Why was that writing so terrible? Was it just technique? Or was it that they didn't have clear thinking? Or was it that they repeated themselves? Or like they needed an editor or something? So it reminds me of an experience at university. I had maybe the best instructors ever. Most, like I'd say 99% of the instructors I had were so good at what they did. Choral conducting, composition, my opera singer, amazing, amazing, amazing.
Mhm,
And my childhood instructor, choir instructor, and vocal instructor was so. She taught me so much about technique and showing up for yourself, and like all the things that made you a good student. She taught me so much. But it was my worst teacher at university, who had in front of her 40 students, 40 vocal majors in her choir. And she was so bad during those hours with us. She had 1 hour a day with us. And she had all this talent at her fingertips and could have made us do and learn, and she could have challenged us to do so much difficult material. And she did the very bare minimum. It was such an interesting way to learn for me, because I was like, I learned from all the best, and then I also learned from the worst. So reading also makes you do that thing where you're reading something and you're like, I hate this. Why do I hate this writing? And examine what was good about why. Like I've told people to read that Stephen King book, even if they don't like Stephen King's fiction. I'm
mhm,
like, read his memoir, because you'll read a story of a person who's so passionate about the language, communication, storytelling, characters. Like, oh, I love that book so much.
mhm. And I'm glad you mentioned your instructor because as I reflect on you know all the teachers that I've had so far from like grade school to you know university, even my current ones. And I think you've mentioned a few questions ago that you would like to teach music or at some point in your life. Um, I find that I am a naturally inquisitive person, which is why this podcast kind of works for me because it's a medium for me to ask people I don't know strange and inane questions like what I'm doing right now. Um,
Not it. You're not inane. They're not inane questions.
much appreciated. Thank you. And I've learned from a very early age that grown-ups, and some of them are in the teaching profession, tend to shut down a line of inquiry when they get impatient or frustrated, etc. But some do not. There are some who I think indulge my line of inquiry either because they are they're interested or they want to humor me or they really want to get to the
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 bottom
nook
of it.
and cranny of my questioning, and they tend to be the kind of people that I gravitate towards, and that applies to my instructors too. In fact, I find that the kind of subjects that I become interested in are very much dependent on the kind of instructor who took their time and effort to humor me, to indulge my line of questioning. So I wonder if that is the same experience for you.
Absolutely. And I believe you sound like I feel like I relate to this in that I think I'm a lifelong learner. And I think that the minute you stop thinking that you have something to learn, you're going to be a terrible teacher. Um, because everybody can teach me something. Like I have a lot of nieces and nephews who range in ages from 3 years old to 26, and the 26-year-old hasn't had my life experience, but I haven't had their life experience, and I can learn as much from the 26-year-old as I can the 19-year-old if I'm listening and asking the right questions. And I love questions because it usually means that you want more, like that there's more to an answer. Like you could ask a simple answer like what was the town, what's your town called? But you're asking like something more interesting, like what is the difference between this town and this town? And it actually, your question stretches me to think. I haven't thought like lately what's different about Toronto than my town. Like what are the differences? What makes me tick when I'm in one, and what makes me tick when I'm in the other, and why do I need both? Or so when I'm thinking about a subject, I think I have like a lot of skills I can teach a lot of kids, but I think the best skill I can teach them is to continue to be curious and not think that they know everything because nobody nobody likes a know-it-all. And any teacher that doesn't want to hear your follow-up question, it sounds like a real lost opportunity to probably either they're scared that they don't know the answer, but if I was in their position, I'd be like, that is a great question. I don't know the answer. Let's go find that answer out together. Or that seems like a good source for an essay to go dive into that subject matter because I don't. The only thing I know to be true, the older I get, is how little I know. But I got to tell you, if you asked me when I was 20 or 19, I could have told you I thought I knew everything. I was like, I know everything. I'm 19 years old. And now the older I get, I'm just like, there is just so much I don't know. But if I keep my eyes and ears open, I find this life to be very interesting. And I think that's where you get good ideas for characters or stories or interactions. What makes a conversation interesting? Like listening to somebody, learning where they're from, what makes them tick, really. Like, I don't even go up to somebody and say, I don't even ask somebody what they do. I ask them how they spend their time. If I'm meeting someone new, I'm like, how do you spend your days? Because I don't want to know how they make their money necessarily. I'm just like, what do you do? I don't mean what do you do for money. I mean like how did you spend your day? And I would tell you today I spent my day. I drove my nephew to school. I went skating for an hour. I'm gonna see my sisters later. I painted and I did my taxes. That's how I spent my day today. And I'm hoping I get to play one of these guitars today before the day is over.
I
And the
found
same
that,
thing, like yeah.
yeah, sorry, I interrupted you. So you were saying, oh, okay,
No, I was just gonna keep
I got you.
rambling.
I find that the best conversations that I've had either in a personal setting or even on this show are the ones that after the conversation ended, a third party asked me, so what did you guys talk about? I draw a blank. So I couldn't talk, I couldn't recite or recall what was talked about. I just recalled that we had a
It
good
was a good
chat.
conversation. I agree. I agree. And you must listen to like I don't know about you, but I'm a podcast person. Like you must
Yeah,
be, listening as much as you're making them. And
I'd
it's
say
the
so.
best. Yeah. And I love long form conversations. I love listening to somebody get to the meat of, if nothing else, the curiosity of like trying to get to the bottom of something. I find it very relatable. Like, and I'm obsessed with these 3-hour podcasts. I will go for a long run and put it on for half an hour and turn it off and think about what I just heard. And it's not about a certain subject. It's just a conversation between two wise people or two people. If maybe they're not wise, maybe they're just curious people. I like those the most.
Oh yeah. I do find that there are two types of podcasts that I listen to. One that, where the episodes are focused on a subject and they spend however long they spend, however much time to focus on that subject. And there are those other kinds of podcasts where it can go for like 2 or 3 hours where they talk about everything under the sun. So basically like nothing in particular, but you kind of follow along to the flow of conversation because
Those can be
being the fly on the wall, I suppose.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And if you like, if even if in the because everybody has to come up with the title of this episode, or I was listening to somebody talk about a psychiatrist talk to an athlete about they intersected on like what makes what is their through line there? Well, they both care about mental health, and one's an athlete and one's a psychiatrist, and they seem to have this like, oh my God, I got to the end of 2 hours, and I was like, oh, I want to hear more. What else did they talk about when they turned the microphone off? And I love the Fall of Civilizations podcast. You listen to that one?
Do tell me about.
Oh, you should listen to it. It's subject. I'm the same as you, like where I either want free form, long conversations where I'm a fly on the wall, or the one that my partner and my two best friends were like, you have to listen to. Is called The Fall of Civilizations. I'm just looking it up while we talk so I can make sure I'm saying it right. And they pick different eras in time where a civilization reached its point and fell apart over like the history of humanity. Fall of Civilizations. Highly recommend it. They pick an era that's very well researched, very well written, and it's an hour maybe of learning about an entire empire that grew and fell in a period of time, and its history, and it's stuff I might have maybe heard, maybe I knew bits and pieces of that, but it's the whole story. Oh my goodness! So
Mhm.
Fall of Civilization is my recommendation to you. You can give one to me too because I love podcasts.
Of course, I'll keep that one in mind. So in relation to that, to what you've said, one of my dream travel destination is Tunisia because there you can find the last remaining relics of the Carthaginian Empire. Uh,
Wow.
that's where, and it is the more I read about Carthage and his history with Rome, I find more and more fascinating because there was a time when Carthage was like the ruler of the world, but because of the rise of Rome and Carthage's eventual defeat at the hands of the Romans, we don't really know much about their culture. All we know, or virtually all we know about Carthage is through the Romans. And yeah, and I suppose in response, I'm listening to a podcast called, was it Conversations with Tyler? Tyler is the host, Tyler Cowen.
Okay.
He's a mathematician and blogger. He works at the George Mason University, and it is kind of like this free form conversation that I really like. It is I suppose he in a tongue-in-cheek manner calls it the podcast equivalent of a first date because he invites these like guests on, which are all like really remarkable people, and he asked them about he doesn't like focus on a topic in particular. He just asked them things that he find interesting. So they're after like 2 or 3 questions about like their personal life and work, he would jump to like maybe a question about food or overrated travel destinations or music and film
Oh, I
and
love it.
niche musical genres that they may or may not be interested in. Yeah, it's
I think
mind
that's
blowing.
I think that's something I've looked it up. I've flagged it, so I'm gonna go take a look through some
Awesome.
of the see whatever. I find this is like I'm funny, like when it comes to conversation, I love conversation that just flows. And I find I find one of the things about our work in music is I write music and I play music to communicate with people. That is how I'm communicating an expression of like a period of time in our lives, or there's a reason why I'm putting it into song and why I take it to a stage and why I share it with people that way. So when I have to talk about it, I actually find it maybe the hardest part of my work because my format of communication is through song, not necessarily by describing my songs. If you know what I mean? So I find like I'd much rather get on a conversation and talk about the person and intersperse it with like how I got here or why or where I've been or where it's taken me more than like the story behind the songs always. I don't always know how to talk about them, and that's why they became songs and why they're not essays or stories. So I have, in much to what you were talking about before, I write every day, and I used to keep a really regular blog. And the topics on my blog would become the fodder for not necessarily songs, but the banter on stage. We would play a song, I'd tell a story. We'd play a song, I'd tell a story. And those stories, if you capture enough of them, I find one of my mantras in life is to to lighten the mood. I think a lot of the things that happen to us that are really bad become the best funny stories on stage. And so there are stories in everything. Like there's just a story in everything if you look for it. So the more I wrote, the better banter I had, and the more I wrote in my journal, the better my songs got. And if you keep like a running tally, you're like you all you have to do is like look it up and go, oh, that was that day that I did that funny thing and that pigeon ran into my face or something. I got to remember that story for stage. That's a funny one or something. So I feel like all of this to say I like talking about like human experiences that are relatable, and I just happen to get to use music as my outlet to communicate with people the most, which I love, which I think is so cool and lucky and very fortunate. Like my dad doesn't get to do that, you know. I'd love for my dad to write a song. Oof, I'm gonna ask him today. He's a farmer. He's not writing a song for me.
Yeah, so I wonder, has a conversation much like this one ever inspired you to write a song?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Uh, I feel like the word inspiration for me means, did it get me thinking? Did it get me curious? Did it give me more resources when I leave feeling like that was really nice? I feel like I got to know Chung a little bit more than I did last time. It's easier one on one for me. I love this kind of format. One on one is like the absolute best. Because last time it was all three of us with you.
Yeah.
That's harder, right? Because the three of us are trying to answer your questions, and you have got three different personalities, and we're negotiating who wants to say what, when, about what, and that's fun. And like I have a lifetime of that with Caroline and Sue. Um, but a conversation like this, usually, if I leave the conversation with a few more ideas or thoughts, or now I'm going to be thinking about Tunisia because I have never thought about traveling there.
Yeah,
Like that's just
well,
now, yeah.
yeah, yeah, it's I think I haven't thought about it either until I learned of the history of Rome and the fall of Carthage. Obviously, it's a much different nation now than when Carthage existed, but still. Um,
Fascinating.
so from your experience, what are some of the things that music can express that mere words cannot?
Do you do you play instruments?
I wish I
And
do,
sing?
but I've tried the piano and the guitar and the keyboard, and I find that I'm hopelessly bad at all of them.
Do you sing?
Um, Only in very, very private settings.
I feel like why I'm asking is because I feel like one of my earliest memories in university with my vocal coach was he said he was a lovely is a lovely he's still kicking. I love him. He's not, he I'm still friends with him. He's 80, I think, big German opera singer. He said, "Aren't we so lucky? We get to like scream on pitch and get our feelings out, like just by warming up, just by like doing a vocal, wow, you get to basically scream and it sounds pretty if you wanted to. He says, aren't we so lucky we get to scream on a beautiful pitch? And I thought, never thought about it that way, that every single day I sing and move my lungs to vocalize something, uh, I'm screaming, I'm emoting, I'm putting something out there. And when I when I was like 11, I remember going and sitting and listening to this choir, and it was girls ages like I was 11. It was girls ages 10 to 19, and they sang this song. I didn't understand the words; they were in Latin, and I sat in that church and felt the sound around my body, and my little 11-year-old skin got goosebumps. And it wasn't about the words; they weren't talking about my feelings, but my whole body became electrified by the sounds and however it affected my body. I said to my turn to my parents, and I said I want to audition for that choir because I just wanted to be part of that. I wanted to make that sound with them. And you, it didn't matter. I didn't know the language. I just knew this. I knew my body and my I knew I was moved by it. And uh, I never looked back. I joined that choir and stayed in it as long as I could and went to school for music. And I would tell you that the things that music, what I notice if I spend a couple of days only doing computer work or, taxes or administrative stuff and I don't make music, I feel off. I feel like I'm missing another part of what makes life feel good. So I think music just taps into something very elemental that you can't I can't write an essay. Now I'm very moved by poetry and essays, and I'm so glad that words exist and all that. So I'm not saying you can't be moved by that stuff, but music just literally strikes up different parts of our brains and our bodies, and that you can do that with 50 other people and sing in a choir as well as just sit at home and noodle on a guitar, and those things all get you excited. I think that's amazing. I think that's amazing. I think and my somehow my 11-year-old self knew that or felt. I probably felt it when I was 5. In fact, I know I felt it when I was 5 because I have a bunch of sisters and we all sang in harmony at home, and I'd be always like, let's do that again. They're like, Kerri, leave me alone, we want to go watch TV, and I'm like, let's sing. Like I just like music is so. I think we're meant to. I think we all should sing. I think we should all do something and scream on pitch.
I find that recently I've been drawing myself more into music that contains either only instrumental or music whose lyrics are in a language that I do not understand. Um,
Cool.
so I suppose an example would be something by Brian Eno of his like instrumental music works. Um,
Ambient, beautiful music.
oh
I'm
yeah,
obsessed with Brian Eno.
oh
Obsessed.
yeah, he's a genius. Um, Now the reason why is that I believe that pop music these days are, or at least pop music since forever, is it's being there's a certain tyranny of lyrics being imposed upon pop music in order to be like a hit single. Well, you have to have lyrics in it, and the lyrics have to be a certain kind of way that people can either sing along or search up on the internet. So there's not enough or not any room really for music without lyrics, or at least without understandable lyrics in order for to be popular. So I think that that kind
That's sad,
of
isn't it? Isn't
yes.
that sad? Isn't it sad that there's this like that? Because okay, so we're I want to just define two words there, which is like popular music being the stuff that's getting the most promotion, and the base the business model is it can make the most money. Let's say, like if you write a pop song, it has to have lyrics, drums, whatever. But pop music, like there's a lot of pop music out there. It's funny that we it's just funny. It's a business. It's like a how do I get a top 40? They've worked it out to a formula in some cases
Mhm.
because I love pop music. Like I love a good song with great catchy lyrics and a great melody and a hook, and I love drum. Like I love it all. Like I feel like music is music is music is music. Isn't it weird that there's just this one, like at the moment the culture is like straight through ahead. There would have been a time when maybe folkier stuff or something with less of a beat would have been popular. Maybe even an instrumental that didn't have like more than like somebody oohing and awing on it.
Mhm.
Isn't that just strange? Like that we need lyrics to connect with most people. I don't know.
Yes. In terms of classical music, I find that the German stuff, it's a little bit overrated, but the English, the British classical music is should be more well known. I guess people like Elgar or Ralph Vaughan Williams.
I
Because
mean, early music is gorgeous. Like Renaissance early music from England.
mhm,
Yeah.
yes, the reason why is that I find that um Beethoven, for example, he invokes like grand themes and narratives um, in his great compositions. But Elgar and Williams, they invoke the pastoral. So, and it goes the same with how when you read the German romantics, you get big feelings. But when you read the English romantics, they invoke the poetry of the ordinary. Think Blake and Wordsworth, and I prefer
I
that a lot more.
maybe a good word for that is the nuance. It's like you have to sit with these things that aren't so overtly trying to get your attention or trying to be dramatic. And I mean, isn't that just the gift of like isn't that also the variety of like having uh I mean, we're talking about early music, Renaissance music. We're talking about I write folk music and pop music. Like, there's like I got room for it all. Give me a good hip hop song with quick lyrics and amazing poetry. I have got room for that. And for you, I think the variety of it is exciting, and the nuance of it. So you're not just being hammered over the head with like this is a good song. Like, oh, let internalize it a little bit. Let me sit with this more. And I don't want to say delicate piece of music, but are you a fan of Arvo Pärt?
Um, yeah. Oh, that's how his name is pronounced.
I say Pärt. I think it's got the umlaut over the A. I think it's Pärt, Arvo Pärt. I am enamored by
Mhm.
Arvo Pärt and have so much of that music because it calms me and it brings me deep, big feelings, really big feelings.
Mhm.
I was joking because I love some of my favorite music as a teenager to play on the piano was Brahms, which was hit you over the head dramatic stuff. But I was a teenager and I needed big, fat chords and I needed to bang on that piano to get those same feelings out. So it struck me as whatever gets somebody to love music, I will use it. If
Mhm.
they want hip hop, I will bring in hip hop and then I will teach them something on the piano. And if they want to listen to Arvo Pärt, let me play Arvo Pärt and then we'll learn how to play that on a synthesizer. I just don't want there to be a barrier for someone to feel like they can't get into music. And I just think that your tastes, probably you've listened to so much music that you've developed a desire to like not to like look for the secrets like that people are missing. I think that's probably another part of your personality is that you're looking for the stuff that people are missing. You're looking for all these artists. You're talking to all sorts of artists that like, you know, that aren't Taylor Swift. It's nice.
Mhm.
It's clever. It's interesting to me.
Yes. And yeah, just to follow up, yeah, Arvo Pärt, and also Tarkovsky, the filmmaker Andrei Tarkovsky, are the reason why I got interested in Orthodox Christianity. I have a friend who's a convert to the faith, and yeah, I find that yeah, I am like a Christian too, but a Catholic, and I find that that area of Christianity, the more I know about it, the more I am intrigued by it.
the music, the texts, the everything. That's awesome. That's awesome. I mean, I I went to the United Church, and I wasn't overly religious, and I wasn't under religious. I enjoy very much that music was a big part of my church experience because it exposed me to that. And I joined a choir that was competitive, and we competed in Vienna, and we competed at Shrewsbury Festival. And this was my whole base for music was piano, choir, and church. And then I got to write my own. And somehow in my own writing, I've developed some styles that are like old swing, some folk, some pop. Like, I don't know, it's all in there somewhere. So, and it's everything I've ever learned is still in there when I'm writing. So I find that really cool. We should share some. We should share some playlists, some artists that we like quite love. I'm gonna do some. I'm gonna listen to some more Parrot today now that we've spoken about him.
Of course. Yes.
I really, really enjoy this conversation with you. We should do this. We should do this once a year.
Yeah, sure. I'll see you in 2025. Okay. It's lovely meeting you, Kerri O. And thank you for joining the show.
Thank you so much for having me again, and let's follow up with some podcasts and songs.